Hi everyone and welcome back to the Shack. Firstly, I'd like to say a huge thank you to all of those who subscribe to the channel or do so as a result of this or other episodes. Recently, the channel passed 500 subscribers and over 10,000 views, which for a channel less than 6 weeks old was just overwhelming and far beyond any expectations I had when starting out on this journey. I really can't thank you enough for the continued support, and in return I can only promise to try and continue to bring interesting things to the channel in the weeks, months and hopefully years to come. Anyway, on with today's episode, where we're looking at not only a retro computer but also how and why this machine slots into the history of the most successful computer company of all time. We'll be looking at how the identity crisis of the company filtered down to the models being produced and what made this particular machine have the longevity of sales when compared to its stablemates. The machine's in a bit of a state, so I'm sure there'll be a few surprises along the way, but hey, that's half the fun, right? So join me today as we discover the Apple Macintosh LC475. The Apple Macintosh LC475, otherwise known as the Apple Macintosh Quadra 605, also otherwise known as the Apple Macintosh Performer 475. Confused? Well, many people were, especially as the LC475 with an 80MB drive was $1,085. The Quadra 605 with a 160MB drive was $1,300, and the Performer 475 with the same 160MB drive was a whopping $1,600. All versions were, to all other intents and purposes, identical, but they did target entirely different markets. The LC, standing for low cost, was aimed at the educational market, the Quadra at the home market, and the Performer at businesses who clearly had more money and less sense than home buyers. With Steve Jobs being dismissed from Apple in 1985, the company had been through a bit of an existential crisis, not really knowing which way to go, and had dabbled in allowing other people to manufacture Mac compatibles, had had a number of high profile lawsuits, and had discontinued some well loved models. By the early 90s, the Apple product portfolio was confusing at best, with 39 product launches in 1993 alone. The LC475, although officially discontinued in 1994, continued to find its way into schools until well into 1996. Interestingly, these machines were the last small form factor Macs to be made until nearly 10 years later with the introduction of the Mac Mini. So now we know a little bit about this machine, let's take a look at what we need to do to get her up and running and looking as good as new. Cosmetically, the machine is very dirty, and although, for example, the keyboard and the mouse move and click as they should, there's no guarantee that they work. The same unfortunately goes for the floppy drive, which may well have perished belts by now. The monitor has certainly seen better days, with the switch, the plinth, the surround all covered in some sort of sticky debris. And there are controls under the monitor screen which move freely but of course may not work. The power button for the machine is on the keyboard, but we're not going to even try and turn this thing on yet. There are things we need to check on the inside first. The grime on this thing is going to need a lot of work, and we'll probably end up retro-brighting the whole thing too, which is going to be interesting in the UK in February. This little sticker alone could change the price of this machine by $700. Amazing. So let's get this monitor out of the way and open the old girl up. If we're lucky, the backup battery hasn't leaked and we'll be good to check some voltages and attempt to power up. Or it has leaked and we have a lot of work to do. Just before we dive in, let's take a quick tour of the base unit, which does have some damage for us to sort out. Ports on the rear come in the following flavours: the power switch, the kettle plug, an external monitor connector, printer port, modem port, the SCSI interface, the Apple desktop bus, speakers and microphone. the rest of the base isn't in too bad condition and just needs a good clean and a retro bright. There's not really much else to see on the sides or the front, so let's just dive in. The screw has been removed by someone previously, so that's either a good or a bad thing. Good because it may have been serviced, bad because someone may have been prodding. Lifting these two clips carefully, because the plastic is quite old, will allow us to lift off the top of the case in its entirety, and I can already see something very bad. This is corrosion caused by the old battery leaking due to old age. The battery itself is all the way over here. A good thing we didn't try and turn this on, and I hope no one else has either, whilst it's in this condition at least, as that can fry circuits and do all sorts of nasty damage. We'll need to change out this whole battery unit with a modern replacement, presuming we can even get this machine operational again. We'll try and clean up this corrosion with some vinegar initially, and we'll have to hope that the corrosion hasn't reached the chips or damaged tracks too much. If the corrosion is too bad, this could mean the whole mainboard has got to be replaced, but for now let's hope we can clean it up and perhaps just have to patch a few traces. Fingers crossed. It looks like the RF shield underneath is rusted too, and that could mean this machine has been stored in a damp place over the years. More corrosion over here where we found the battery, so again possible damage to the SCSI hard disk, and that speaker might also need to be replaced. We've got extra memory installed here, so that's a good thing, and we've also got fully populated VRAM sockets. Let's check the RAM sticks to see how much VRAM we have and for any corrosion, although at first glance the battery leakage doesn't seem to have reached over here. This stick looks clean and no signs of damage. The markings on the chip tell us it's an M5 M4821288AJ, which my good friend Google informs me is a Mitsubishi 128K memory module. There are two sticks with two modules on each stick, so that's 512K of VRAM. We'll just pop out the other stick to make sure that one's undamaged too. And yes, this looks clean as well. There's 4 MB of RAM soldered to the mainboard as standard, but let's check to see how much extra RAM is installed and also that the RAM stick is undamaged. This HY M532100 AM-70 is a Hyundai 4 MB stick, giving this machine 8 meg total memory. The 68LC040 processor looks untouched from this side, and the power connectors seem good too, although of course we still need to look under the board. So let's start removing the other main components, starting with this stubborn power supply cable. There we go. And then the power supply itself, which is removed by releasing these plastic tabs, which again we need to be careful with as too much force will snap them. With the power supply lifted clear, I'm pleased to see there's very little corrosion either on or underneath the power unit. And that's definitely rust on the RF shield. Let's turn our attention now to the floppy drive by undoing the connection to the mainboard and then again gently prising open the plastic tabs and lifting the drive unit clear. And no corrosion visible here at all, so this unit may just need a service. So we'll move on to the hard drive next, although this cable seems to not want to be removed from the mainboard, and that's a good sign of further corrosion. So we'll try to disconnect the other end for now, and that way hopefully we can just get the drive out. Underneath is not pretty, and it certainly looks like we have leakage going underneath the mainboard as well. Let's remove this power cable and set it aside. And then, being careful with the plastic tabs again, we'll lift out the hard drive. and under here it's a bit of a mess. If we're really lucky, that's just the hard drive caddy that's been corroded and not the drive itself, although of course we won't know until we take a further look. So we can take a guess here as to what might have happened, with the battery corroding its own contacts, and then with the machine being stored upright, the battery's fallen over here and leaked mainly under the hard drive. If so, our main board may not be too badly damaged, with this being the main area that's corroded. Let's now pop out the fan and the speaker. These are both easily replaceable, as they're both off-the-shelf generic parts. And this speaker is definitely going in the bin. It looks like the corrosion here has completely eaten through the RF shield. A lot of Macs in this era use the RF shield as part of the electrical circuit, carrying the ground signal around the chassis. So we'll need to make sure that where we can't replace or repair the RF shield, we do at least bridge those electrical signals. The main board is in a lot better condition than I was fearing, with only minimal signs of corrosion. Of course, the problems may run deeper, but my initial thoughts are that we can clean this up. Taking a close look at the main board now it's out of the chassis, we can see that it is indeed mainly surface corrosion, and that other parts of the machine took the main brunt of the battery damage. We may need to replace this power socket, but on the whole, given the nature of these batteries, it's a lot better than I was starting to fear. And here's why that hard drive cable wouldn't come out easily. It was fused to the connections in here. So how to deal with the corrosion on the main board? Well, here in the UK we call fries chips, and what goes with chips? Vinegar. Well, this will react with the battery acid and loosen it up. It takes a while and may need a few goes, and of course we need to fully clean up the whole board afterwards with a good rinse with water, followed by dousing in isopropyl alcohol before we can inspect the board for any resulting damage. We're going to have to leave these to soak for a few days, so we'll end this episode by recapping what we found. Well, we know that you should never pay for a label, and that it's good to do your homework, but we've also discovered that our own poor little LC475 has been another victim to the dreaded battery attack. Although some parts do seem unscathed and some parts are easily replaced, we need to service the floppy drive, and we're hopeful that the power supply is undamaged. Please join us in part 2 of this series, where we'll concentrate on a full clean and repair where necessary. We'll attempt to get the machine to boot and run, and then in the final part of the series we can see how this 90s machine with an identity crisis copes nearly 30 years on. As always, thanks for watching. Please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to be notified of new content. If you've ever used one of these or had one of its stablemates, please leave your comments below, we always like to read them. And until next time in the shack, it's goodbye from me.